Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dana Harris. I am the editor-in-chief of IndieWire, and welcome to this afternoon's panel. We're here for a really special film called The Free World. It is a, as my film critic would probably call it, it's a really delicate drama, extremely intense, and it's anchored by two amazing performances, Elisabeth Moss and Boyd Holbrook, and with Octavia Spencer also giving an amazing performance as well. And we have all of them here. We have a whole crew of them here. So I'm going to start introducing them. We have writer-director Jason Lew. Actors Boyd Holbrook, Elisabeth Moss, Octavia Spencer, Waleed Zuaiter, and producer Laura Rister, and DP Bérénice Eveno.
I did not bring my sandwich up here.
All right, so Jason, I'm going to start off with you because I think it's only fair. Tell us about The Free World as the writer. I mean, what inspired this story?
Well, I'm always attracted to characters that dwell on the outside and feel very uncomfortable in the world. And for me, story always starts with character. And I was just very drawn to these circumstances of somebody who's kind of an alien to the world that we know around us and is struggling to just acclimate to normal life. And the way I start a story is just to have characters that I find fascinating, get them talking to each other, and see what develops. And this is what developed.
So what kind of research did you have to do to create this? Because I mean, the sense of place here is really, really strong, and it felt like these felt like people that were known, and that's like I'm not sure these are people that you really want to know necessarily, but they felt like they were very familiar to you.
Yeah. Well, in terms of research, I tried not to go too far down the rabbit hole with the prison experience. One book that was really important to me and then also to Boyd was Jack Henry Abbott's In the Belly of the Beast, which is this incredible slim tome about this man in the 70s who is, it's his letters from prison to Norman Mailer about the experience of incarceration. And that, to me, was a real key into being able to imagine that kind of suffering and the completely having your humanity stripped. But my approach to it's a very personal film, but I find that having some distance and not trying to kind of replicate my biography necessarily, but finding containers where I can put emotions in this film, these feelings of outsiderism and these explorations of mysticism, and just putting them in characters that I find interesting that are in heightened situations, and then that allows me to have some distance to explore. So.
Boyd, in terms of your character, what was it's? I mean, because it's like this is a man who feels from the get-go so deeply isolated. How do you prepare for a role like that? I mean, that seems like a very kind of delicate balance to have to walk.
It's a really good question. I've read this, and I think the first time I read it, the first time I ever cried and read something, and that was, it's really a great experience, and I don't think it's that cool to be that tough, and I think it's great to have emotions and to live freely as this guy is trying to do. So, there was a physical aspect of putting on weight, and then there was also understanding about Islam and going after the Quran and learning Arabic and learning the prayers, praying 5 times a day, how that just literally changed.
How does that affect you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, curriculum, you go for any, you're sort of a product of your environment, I believe, in a conditioning sort of way in everyone's life. Like, if you go to work in a coal mine, like that's what kind of, you know, gives that certain edge to your personality. So, Jack Henry Abbott, the book In the Belly of the Beast, to me was flooring. You know, this guy had been basically in jail since he was 11, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And, yeah, in and out. He spent 6 months of his life out. So Jason gave me this opportunity, and I don't read scripts like this. They're not really around. And so I think all the other actors up here will, you know, respect that. If you get an opportunity like this, you better bust your ass. You know? You better go after it. So, and have a good time doing it, hopefully. But it was just, you know, I had a couple months with it, 3 or 4 months, and that's not like learning dialogue. There's so much more to go into it. And I really found this really interesting person in New York who I won't get into talking about breathing.
Don't give away the secret.
But you know, to how do you figure out what being in isolation for, you know, 3 months? Like, how do you experience that? So I found this lady in New York, and we started doing these sort of meditative. It sounds really hokey, but meditative sort of breathing exercises. And if you're having a physical experience in breathing and you're having a mental experience, then it's debatable of like actually doing something and doing it, not like doing it. If that makes sense, probably doesn't. But
Doing by not doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I just put a lot of. I knew how important it was to Jason, how long it takes to write something. So I just wanted to honor that as much as possible.
Elisabeth, what about for you? I mean, your performance is. Yeah. It's really raw. I mean, it's just like you know, she's just like from the first moment we see her, we just you know this woman just seems like she is just about to explode, and how you know. What was your process for that? What was your process for getting that point? Because it just feels like everything is all out there.
Yeah, she is a victim of domestic violence, and so the research that I did had to do with that, which is a really sort of terrible, dark world to go into, but is also very inspiring because there's a lot of really, you know, inspiring stories of very strong women who have survived and who have chosen to talk about it, which is really hard. It's really hard to talk about it. So that was my sort of way into her, because that kind of experience, not that I, you know, can profess to have any sort of actual experience with that, but just from my watching and reading things, it shapes how you view the world, just like you said about environment. It really does. And so everything is scary for you, and every time somebody lifts their hand, you think that you're going to get hurt. So that was a big part of learning something that I didn't really know a whole lot about. But then also it was really important to Jason and I were talking about this earlier, that she be strong and that she not be a victim, that she be a survivor. We were saying how there were a couple of times when Boyd would, being the Southern gentleman that he is, would try to help me down from a truck or help me down, you know, help me physically. And Jason would, on the next take, ask him to not do that, because it was really important that Doris be strong and able to do things on her own physically. So that was for me something that those two kind of things, the vulnerability and the strength, were really that's like my favorite thing to try to play. So I really sort of connected with that from the script originally.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't come off as anybody's victim.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah, but she's also yes, but she's at the darkest moment of her life when she meets Boyd's character. She's at the most raw moment of her life, probably, which is a really fun place to start as an actor.
It's very funny. It's like, this sounds like a good time to me.
Oh, yeah, I had a blast. It was so much fun. It was awesome.
I like to write actor porn.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
That's my MO. I'm like,
right?
all right. You know, really do it.
You're crying and you're covered in blood.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And you have no time to prepare. Go.
Go.
Octavia, you were saying cheers to that. That's a really powerful phrase, but obviously it's one that you understand. What do you think that means, actor porn?
Oh, I have an idea, but I need to keep it clean. So, actor porn is getting to work with an amazing group of talented people with material that's going to challenge you and hopefully create some dialogue that's necessary in our society. And I thought that Jason did a magnificent job because he's also an actor and he speaks our language. And he wrote all of these unique characters who had really wonderful backstories. And that's kind of what I look for. I look for, the diversity and the story itself. And for me, I like to, if it's a character that I'm going to play, I like to imagine what it would have been like for me. And so I'm claustrophobic, and I'm also a person who the character was, had been incarcerated and had been given a second chance. So it was important to be able to see beyond that. So I have my ideas of actor porn, but right now I'm just going to keep it about the actor part.
Jason comes from. Jay, howdy, how you?
Here, you smile. Then what do you do? Oh, you'll give it back to me.
Oh, right.
Hello. Oh, works for me.
Oh, that sucks. No, Jason, he's such a background in acting. I think that's really what goes into his writing. Like you can just tell it, and also his direction is insane. He's incredible career ahead of him. But what you're talking about is that if you're going to make something, then you can't extend like the conversation as it should be, right? Because why else are you making something? Exactly. And yeah, actor porn may be a really funny way to say it, but just to
I think it's a great phrase. Seriously.
But if you're going to spend your time on something, then yeah, I mean, there's so many social issues, the stigmatism associated with Islam, and the incarceration rate right now is at 2.2 million people. It's outrageous. So it's relevant, I think.
And Waleed, I'm going to pick on you for this question. What is the difference between being directed by an actor versus a non-actor, in your experience?
Be careful. It's funny because I don't think I've been directed by. I'm trying to remember if I've ever been directed by an actor before, and I don't think I have. I'm probably wrong, but the difference is. I don't know. I mean, like some directors are. I think the key is sensitivity. Actors are, from my experience, most of the actors are very sensitive people, and the directors that I've worked with that are the best directors that I've ever had, just amazing experiences just have that same sensitivity, and know how to speak to you. And so an actor kind of knows how they would prefer to be directed or spoken to. So there's that sensitivity that I think that Jason brings, but it's not just because he's a good actor or he comes from that world, but I think it's also because there's a level of maturity. A good director, in my opinion, is a great parent, a great leader, really takes care of you and tells you things when you need to hear them and doesn't tell you things when you don't need to hear them, and Jason just did that very naturally, I felt.
Thank you, man. Well, I think that coming from an acting background, there's this, it kind of demystified the process for me a little bit. I think I've worked with some directors that kind of like, okay, just do the thing with the stuff, and like, the kind of magic thing that you do, and I had the fortune of knowing that it actually that it's a highly technical process that needs a very specific. My goal was just to create an atmosphere where good acting could happen, and that they felt safe to take the risks that you need, because like Waleed is saying, actors are the most sensitive and intuitive people on the planet, and they know right away whether you know what it is that they do, and if you don't, if they kind of can sniff out that you don't, they'll just start self-directing, you know, and you'll just get the performance that you get. Am I right, guys? No, because because you know, you're channeling this. They're the conduit. You know, actors are the conduit of your story. They're not props. They're not in the way. They're not something to be. You know, they are your story. So, in order to get them to take risks that you need to push themselves, they have to trust that you have them. You know, and I would always try and be as close as Bear would let me be to the frame. Like I'm almost literally like, I got you, girl. But like. You know, so and that was the buzz for me, was getting to work with. I mean, this is an absurd cast, so you know, but just really trying to create that environment, and Laura was amazing in helping that, and Bear, you know, talks about how the DP is really their first audience, and you know, she takes that very seriously, and so it was really just creating this atmosphere where people felt safe. I mean, it sounds.
There was an amazing energy on set, and we all felt it. And for me, it's just you know, a great thing for everybody. Everybody contributed to that, but I always look to the director for that energy, and he was amazing. I mean, it was just incredible.
Laura, and making a movie like this always to me seems like a not even a minor miracle, kind of a major miracle. In terms of not only because obviously you have this, you know, great cast and as clearly, you know, all very tight. How did you put this movie together, and how many days did you have to shoot it?
Not enough. Yeah, no, I echo that, and I often call every movie a little tiny miracle when you're done with it, because it genuinely is. And there's also a story behind every movie, and they're always very different. In this case, you know, it took patience. It took financing falling apart and coming back together again.
How many times did that happen?
I'd say one real time, but twice. That was we had a scare, and it takes support from financiers who are willing to let you take on this risky journey. As far as the cast is concerned, it starts with a script. It starts with a filmmaker. Always that filmmaker, in this case, has to have a strong vision, and you have to feel confident that director sitting in a room with any one of these talented actors can, you know, instill confidence in them. And so for me, that's from the start. If I look in the eyes of that director and believe that he or she is going to take everybody on that journey, then I say, okay, let's do this. And no matter how hard it gets, even with the, you know, those depths of sadness when something falls apart, you stick through it and you just say, okay, tomorrow let's pick back up. So it was a journey, but once we got down to New Orleans and we were there for day one for our 23-day shoot, we thought, okay, we're here, and hallelujah, you know, and let's get started.
Bérénice, what was your thinking in terms of creating the look of the film? Because it is, you know, it's extremely. I mean, this is actually just a lame phrase, atmospheric. I mean, it's just, but it's like, but it feels really humid. it feels like what it was. It felt like it was. Yeah, I mean, but it feels like there's kind of a sense of kind of a certain kind of claustrophobia, even that's just like, you know, of kind of walls closing in, even though there really aren't any walls. I guess the ones that your character used to be in with a prison. But it's like, how do you create that? You know, how do you create that effect?
Yeah, I mean, it was really important for Lew and I to have a movie that looks very real. I mean, it's about, you know, this simple character, this very real, you know, character. So we started with Mo's, you know, psychological state and started with something very claustrophobic, very still at the beginning, very locked off and sort of kind of maybe awkward a little bit. And then with the entrance of Doris, you know, we introduces more like camera movements and more flow and more light coming in. At first, it feels almost like a mosque/prison, the light coming from the outside, everything kind of dark and contrasty. And then it opens up with her. It opens up with love because, you know, religion is not enough. She's really bringing you know, the liberation. And then we go on the ride with them. And I think what really worked was starting with that. So in the end, when we get to the handheld, to the very frantic thing, it feels like that. It feels very much like the emotional journey. And that was really important for Lou and I think.
They kept telling me they had this plan.
To have this plan?
They had a plan.
They had a plan.
He didn't believe we had a plan, but we did.
He's like, the camera doesn't seem to be moving. We're like, it's gonna be okay.
Design. Just follow the design,
We got a
Boyd.
plan. Like
move
we were
the
like,
camera,
oh
move
shit,
the
start moving the camera. God, you're right, Boyd.
But you were moving enough for us, Boyd.
No, I joke, but you know, Boyd is amazingly collaborative.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wonderful. But I do want to say it's just, you know, this is so difficult. It was I think sometimes it's easy for people to stand up as a filmmaker and be like, yeah, you know, it's great, and we're standing here. This is so hard. I mean, every day. I mean, the first day. It was
Well, actually, that's like, I mean, that's, and God knows, you know, we've all, you know, we know it's like, this is like such a difficult process. Give me a really specific example of what difficult feels like on a given day. Like, what is the thing that makes it difficult? Yeah, bring it on.
Oh, I will. Yeah, where do you get it? I mean, day one, because I'm like, you know, sweating, being like, oh God, are they all gonna find out? I don't know what's going on. And it's 120 degrees, and we're outside in the parking lot doing this, literally in 120 degrees, and we're doing this long scene that that had a lot of continuity, that was in a van and didn't end up making it into the movie. But.
That must kill you. It's like we did all that and...
No, it was great, because it was day one, and like it was so hot that Boyd's soles of his boots melted off his boots. And he's just standing there being like, what the fuck is it? You know, like, and I'm like, it's going to be okay, Boyd. It's going to be okay. I got you. I know, guys.
At that point, you're thinking,
guys,
we don't have enough pair of boots in the budget.
You know, but just the whole, like, it was like a tempest inside. And then, but, you know, then you just settle down and go, okay, I'm going to take this minute by minute, and thankfully this is such an amazing, supportive crew and cast, and this guy was, you know, we had a really special bond. So it was, you just get through it, but, you know, I think it was so hard. It was so hard. Making movies is so hard, y'all.
Well, you did it with grace, because I never, ever suspected. It felt, I'm not kidding, you know, we see things, and you guys did an amazing job at keeping the creative. Oh, I have such a big mouth. But production did an amazing job shielding us from that. We only felt the creative process, and of course, you know, my wig started out as an afro, and it just shrunk because it was so humid. But you guys did it with grace and elegance, and I never would have suspected there was ever a problem because you never showed us that side of it. So
I was just kidding. Everything was chill.
I'm going to see if we have any questions from the audience. Is anybody? Oh, right there.
You talk about the difficulty and all the challenges of creating this, which sounds like a work of art. I haven't seen it, but what is it in your heart that keeps you going, keeps you believing in what you're doing?
Yeah, what makes it worth it?
For me, I hope that, you know, when you see the movie, why I go to the movies is to see a moment of small recognition, just saying, oh yeah, me too. You know, I mean, it's if you and I are talking and we find out we had the same backpack growing up, we get really stoked, and that moment happens, and it's not really about the backpack, it doesn't really matter, but I think it means that for a moment we're connected, and in our darkest, loneliest times that maybe we weren't alone, and it's not an isolated experience. So those are the moments I'm after. I mean, you guys can judge if and it's a personal thing if that's there or not. But that would be, you know, that's why I go to the movies. That's why I go see a painting or a piece of art, to try and have those moments. So and I have to say that making a film is an incredible privilege. I don't consider it a right or an entitlement at all, and to get to, you know, to just get to hopefully that the privilege of trying to share, you know, my experience of being a human being and our experience of being humans in this world, and really not knowing how to do it. You know, so that is what kind of pushes me to try to keep going and through the heat and whatever, you know. So.
And really, the script. I mean, the script was so beautiful. That's what pulled us all through. I think anytime you go back to the script and it's so beautiful, it's so deep and so poetic. That's the endless nourishment right there.
Another question? Anybody else? Okay. How did you guys find each other in terms of director-producer?
I knew Jason first because he was working with a colleague of mine, Ben Curtis, who is his manager now, and met him. We were talking about a movie he had worked on in the past and talking about films, and oftentimes I work on intuition, and we were talking about script. And I said, "You sound like a director. What's going on? What's that plan? What's the plan for you've got in mind here?" And he said, "Funny you should ask." I said, "I've got this script, and I'd like to direct it." And so we started talking about it, and I said, "Let's do it." I've worked with first-time filmmakers a few times now, and it's always scary, but it's also kind of exciting to be part of the foundation of what could be a great career.
What is the biggest difference you see in terms of working with a first-time filmmaker versus one who's kind of been to this rodeo before? I mean, obviously they're going to be new to it, but it's like, what is what's the buzz that you get from it from having that experience?
Good question. I think there's a joy and enthusiasm at getting that chance. And there's a kind of that communal spirit of we're all in this together, and let's see where this takes us, Whereas somebody who's established and more experienced, they've been there, done that. They went through the lessons, they learned things, and they may know better, or maybe they don't. But whereas that first-time filmmaker, you just see the joy of independent filmmaking in the experience.
Believing in someone.
Have you worked with first-time directors before?
I have, yeah. I had a film here called Little Accidents 2 years ago.
The thing is, I feel like this is exclusive to Jason as well as being a first-time director, but I feel like you probably will do this on all of your films. He's so involved, especially with the actors. He's right there, like he said, as close as he can get, that Bear will let him. I mean, if you're on the floor, you're on the floor. He's never sitting at the monitor. I remember on the last day, which was the hottest day, that I got heat exhaustion that night, remember? We were filming on this black asphalt, and I had to run back and forth. It was the last few shots. And he ran with me. Do you remember that? You were like, "I'm running with you." He did not need to run with me, but he was like, if I was doing it, he was going to do it. He was going to stand in solidarity. And I was like, "Dude, you're an idiot. Don't run with me. It's really hot." But it's that kind of enthusiasm, I think, that Laura's talking about, that kind of just so happy to see something that they love, come to life.
There was this great story, which you guys will recall very quickly when I start to tell it, but we were on this sweltering hot bus, and Boyd's scene is you probably recall from the film, is one where there is no dialogue. It's just he's going through a range of emotions, remembering this connection that he's made with Doris. And Jason is down on the bottom of the bus with the little handheld monitor, and he's just kind of feeding all this amazing, I can't even remember everything you said, because it was everything from directing and coaching and acting to just connecting and just feeding him all these things to put in Boyd's head so that he kind of morphed these thoughts into what became that scene. And it's one of my favorite moments in the movie because it's just so beautiful, and you just see him go, through this journey. And I called it a waltz between director and actor, and that's how I feel today.
Yeah, and that's the biggest buzz I got, was getting to work with these actors. Anytime that this small hurricane or whatever that was on its way, or whatever, anything that was falling apart, I could always hold on to my actors and be like, "All right, we're gonna be okay, guys," and that always, everything fell apart, and not fell apart, fell into place. Very different. But yeah, so that's the buzz to me, and getting to watch these some of the most incredible actors I've ever just seen, not even worked with, because it's my first film. So, but yeah, it was a huge honor and blessing.
Well, it's a wonderful film, and thank you guys so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you.